And we're recording. So, okay, welcome everybody. Hope you all got your Halloween costumes kind of sorted out for the weekend. And don't forget, we got the time change. But I'm all glad that you're back. And we had a fabulous time in Piemonte. And now we are off to Tuscany. So for those of you who may not have, I know we have some new people tonight. I'm going to introduce my friend and colleague, Beth Rubin from Olive Tree Escapes. And Beth has been in the travel business, specializing in Italy for about 20 years. It came out of a student trip to Italy where she just fell in love with the country and traveled a lot and had all these wonderful tips and ideas and insider things, and just said, I'm going to follow my passion. And she created this fabulous company with her partner, Maya, who is Croatian. So olive trees are in both Croatia and Italy. So and the two countries have a very close historical connection. So it was just a perfect blend for the two of them. So I love working with them. And Beth she's been very successful, and she actually was awarded Travel and Leisure's list of top travel advisor awards, which is pretty impressive. So, and Beth last week was just a good sport. She was in Croatia, so at 1 o'clock in the morning she was here. Yesterday she flew home from Croatia, so now she's dealing with jet lag, but what a trooper. So anyway, I'm going to turn this over to Beth Rubin. And Beth, take us to Tuscany.
Thanks, Sandy. Hi, everyone. Okay, we're gonna share my screen, which sometimes takes a sec, so bear with me. Okay. And bear with me again.
This picture's for me, Mom.
Oh, no. That's so nice, Ashley.
Can I move that picture of her?
Should be loaded. Can you see it?
One time you gotta make one for Grandpa too.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah, and Grandma.
everyone hear me?
Okay.
There we go. Can you hear me now, Sandy?
Yes, I just wanted to mute everybody because we were starting to get some background noise.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, so hi, everyone. Welcome to an evening in Tuscany. This is me, dressed nicely as opposed to me in my kitchen, jet lagged. So today we're going to Tuscany, like Sandy said. So I just wanted to kind of set you up to see what the country of Italy looks like and where Tuscany is located. So on the left, you see the whole boot with an outline of Tuscany. And then on the right, you see sort of a zoomed in area. So Tuscany is very central in Italy, and the capital is Florence. Everybody's heard of Florence. Some people don't realize that Florence is in Tuscany. So some people say, oh, you know, I want to go to Tuscany and Florence. Okay, you're going to do that. If you go to Florence, you're going to be in Tuscany. But of course, there are other things. So we're gonna do a little bit of both. So we're going to talk about Florence in particular, and then we're going to talk about some other smaller towns in Tuscany, and then we'll do like we did last week for anyone who was here. We'll talk about a little bit of wine, and then we'll have Warren really talk about wine, and then we'll talk about food because it's Tuscany and you're gonna eat.
It's Italy. You have to talk about food.
I know. I was putting this together and I was like, is there anything to talk about besides food? I'm sure there is. So here's Florence. This is just kind of a overview of the city. Obviously, it's stunning. It's the Renaissance city, and it's nothing can beat Florence. It's absolutely fabulous. So on the left, you've got the Duomo, which is the main cathedral, you know, and then you can see all the beautiful Renaissance architecture throughout. It's just a beautiful city. It's a great place to visit. It's a pedestrian city, so there's no car driving in the historic center except for taxis. It's a great city. You can walk from end to end, basically from the train station to the other side of town in 20-25 minutes at a good clip. So it's a nice walking city where it's safe to walk, it's safe to bicycle. So that's kind of nice. And that's actually a newer thing. Maybe within the last 10 years, the mayor of the town at the time decided he wanted to make it a pedestrian city, and that made it much friendlier for tourists, not having to try to get out of the way of cars like you do in a place like Rome. So Florence is known for many things. This is one of the major things that Florence is known for, and that would be, art history, etc. And Michelangelo spent a lot of time in the city of Florence. He worked a lot with the Medici family, and this obviously is his David, which can be found in the Accademia Gallery, and then there are several copies of it scattered throughout the city. There's a lot of art to see. I mean, if you're interested in art and art history, Florence and Rome are the places you want to go. The Renaissance art just exploded in Florence. So you've got your Botticelli, your Michelangelo, some Raphael, some Leonardo, all of that is coming out of Florence. So it's really good to get a private guide and do a walking tour, not only of the museums, but also of the city itself. This is the Uffizi Gallery from the outside. Inside, you've got a room that's filled with Botticellis and rooms that are filled with all these amazing paintings and sculptures and all that. But even the exterior of the building, I think, is fascinating and fabulous. And this was the former offices, which is why it's called Uffizi, which is plural for offices in Italian. And you can see at the bottom, if you look close, all the people that are waiting in line. So it's always good to go with a private guide, and you get skip the line tickets. Currently, of course, you could probably walk right in, but in normal times, it's always good to have the skip the line passes and a private guide to take you into any of the museums in Florence. And that also includes, this is the Pitti Palace and the Boboli Gardens. So Florence also has some beautiful gardens. And when we talk about gardens in Italy, we aren't talking about roses and flowers and things like that. Italian gardens are more topiary and green. So that's something interesting. And the Boboli Gardens outside the Pitti Palace on the opposite side of the river are very interesting to see. And staying on the opposite side of the river is something to consider when you go to Florence, because it's more where the locals live. You know, the historical center, the side with the Duomo and the museums and everything, is heavily touristed. But the other side is where you find the artisans. So you get paper makers, gold makers. Gold is still, being made, jewelry is being made locally in Florence still on the Ponte Vecchio and on this other side of the river. And also, like I said, paper makers, book binders, leather makers. There are still people making leather shoes by hand where you come in and they fit it on your foot. So this is, all very interesting things that you can do. So Florence is not just art and architecture, but it's also shopping, which some of us like, and eating and drinking, which many of us like. And then I wanted to take you outside into some of the smaller towns. So the first one we're going to visit is Pisa. And I'm not going to talk a lot about each of these towns because there's a lot of them, but I thought I'd give you just a couple quick notes about each one so that when you think about traveling, you think about the places that you want to go to. And Pisa is probably one of the most famous, obviously, as you can see in this picture, for its leaning tower. It actually started leaning before they even finished building it. But this area in the town of Pisa is very compact. I mean, the town is very large and it's on the Arno River, just like Florence, but further down and closer to the water, to the Tyrrhenian Sea. But the buildings that you know about in Pisa are very compact and right on this square that's called the Piazza dei Miracoli, the Field of the Miracles. So you've got your leaning tower, and then what you can see here is your Duomo. So to the right off of here is a famous monumental cemetery, and behind the Duomo on the other side is the baptistry. The baptistry is very famous because it's perfectly acoustic. And when you stand at, they have someone come in and do this a couple of times a day. You stand at a certain point and you sing, and you can hear it at all parts, all around you. It's very cool, and it's worth it just for that, for the visit. I think it's cooler than the Leaning Tower. But the Leaning Tower, they reopened, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, and you can climb to the top now. So if you're up for it, you can climb to the top and do it as a visit. Again, tickets in advance, otherwise you're waiting in that long line that you see of people. They're not all just there standing, waiting to hold up the Leaning Tower. They're actually standing in line to visit the tower. And Galileo spent a lot of time there and famously dropped his anvil and bag of feathers from the top to see which would land first in his gravitational experiments, which I think is interesting. And Galileo is actually buried in Florence. So there's a little tie in there.
So Beth, if you walk up to the top, do you have to do it at a 45-degree angle?
I remember the last time I did it was 2013, I think. And I remember, and I was in shape then, which I can't really say now, but I remember huffing and puffing a little as I got to the top and being, I don't want to use the word vertigo, but it was pretty close. It was awkward for sure. So you have to be prepared for that.
I did it in 1973, so maybe it's time for do it again.
And this is the nearby town of Lucca. Lots of people hear about the town of Lucca. And it's a beautiful town. It's a little off the beaten path compared to Pisa, but it's very nearby, and I like to combine them as a day trip from Florence as two things that you can do in one day. Or from the coast or whatever, but they're close to each other. They're about 25, 30 minutes from each other. So they're easy to do together. And Lucca's interesting, especially for people that are more active, because it actually still has its Renaissance walls intact. It's very rare to have a town that's walls are completely intact. So its walls around the town are intact, and you can ride your bike there. It's a lot of people like to do a bike tour around the city on the walls. And just walking the walls is very nice. But the town itself is also lovely, and it's got many, many churches, which I think in Sandy's email talked about all the Catholic churches in Tuscany. And this is one of my favorites, actually. This is the Church of San Michele. And that's right in the middle of town. And look at that. It's Gothic. It's fabulous. And there's many churches in Lucca itself. And the most famous area of Lucca, I didn't put a picture. I thought this church was really interesting, so I put this instead, is that they have a piazza amphitheatro, and it was like it's a piazza that's shaped like an oval, and it was their former amphitheater right there in town. So that's pretty cool too. So Lucca is definitely worth a visit, I think. Again, it's about an hour from Florence, half hour from Pisa. So good as a day trip. And then we're gonna go to Siena. So everybody knows Siena. I think when you think about Tuscany, you think about Chianti and you think about Siena. It's the most famous of the sort of smaller towns. And Siena's always sort of been a rival with Florence. And this is the main piazza. And this is the Piazza del Campo. And Florence is interesting, or not, I'm sorry, Florence. Siena is interesting, I think. It's got Gothic architecture. It's got great artwork. It's got good food. But this piazza, the Piazza del Campo, is actually where they run something called the Palio, which is a horse race that they run twice a year. They do it in July, on July 2nd, and in August, on August 16th. So twice a year, they run a horse race in this little square. And they do it based on what they call the contrade. That's the neighborhoods of the town. And there's 17 neighborhoods. So there's 17 horses running in a circle around this piazza that you're looking at. So it's a huge event. And basically you either want to go to it or you want to completely avoid it. And there's no in between. You either love it or you hate it. So to go to it, it's going to be insanely crowded. They didn't do it this year, of course. And people go crazy about their horses and their neighborhood's horse, and they have big dinners and there's big festivals, you know, and flag throwing and all these great medieval things that you think of when you think of Italy and Tuscany. All of that happens in this great little town. And actually in this building, the Palazzo Pubblico, there's also some great art. There was a lot of great art more in like the 1300s. It was really when it was booming in Siena, so a little earlier than it was booming in Florence. So there's the Gothic town hall that we're looking at. It's got the Lorenzetti brothers have a bunch of paintings in there. If you're interested in art history, I strongly recommend it. On the other side of town, which you can't see, is the Duomo, which has I don't want to say it's a hidden staircase, but it's an internal staircase inside where you can climb up, and there's a little walkway. You stand out, you have these amazing sweeping views of all of Tuscany and Chianti. So that's very cool. Again, lots of stair climbing. And in this particular case, it's one of those terrible windy staircases, a marble windy staircase where you're passing people and you're both going and it, you know, suck in everything and pray that you make it. So if you like that kind of thing, Siena is definitely the place for you.
Well, that's the exercise portion that makes up for all the pasta and wine.
Exactly. exactly. That's why I say Italians never look like Americans, because they do all their walking instead of driving, and they cook with olive oil instead of butter. And this is San Gimignano, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. And I like to pair San Gimignano with Siena as a day trip. They're very close to each other, about 20 minutes. And I don't want to say that there's nothing really famous in San Gimignano. Like Siena, it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But
This is famous from San Gimignano. There we can.
I know,
From right there.
I haven't gotten there yet. I'll go to that in a second. Thank you, Warren. It's a medieval hilltop town, obviously. It had, I want to say, hundreds of towers originally, but now it's down to 13 towers. So it's interesting to go in and walk around. But the wine from San Gimignano is actually the Vernaccia, which I believe you guys are drinking right now. So it's famous for its Vernaccia wine.
And when I was there, I saw an artisan who was working in alabaster. Do they do a lot of that there too?
They do. There's lots of charming little artisans that are lining the streets, which I like about this town. And some people, especially if you have kids or grandkids, like that there's a torture museum. Some people really like that. I remember visiting it when I was in college and sending my dad all these terrible postcards that I thought were hilarious. But it's a cute, charming town. It's small. It's, easy couple hours visit. I mean, you can see even from here where we're far away, it's small. But it's lovely. And again, it's got that wine that you guys are drinking tonight. This one you might not know. This is Arezzo. So okay, in Italy you have your cities and you also have your provinces. And Tuscany is made up of several provinces. There's the province of Florence, there's the province of Pisa, there's the province of Lucca, and there's also the province of Arezzo. And we'll get to some other places that are in the province of Arezzo, but the town itself is very interesting. And if you are a movie buff, if you saw the movie, I think it was in 1996, Life is Beautiful, Roberto Benigni, it won some Oscars. He's from Arezzo, and many of the scenes took place in Arezzo. Arezzo is just, I love it because I live nearby and I lived in the province of Arezzo, so it holds a place in my heart. But as you can see, it's very charming and interesting. And it actually has the oldest antique market in Italy. It started in continuous antique market. It started in 1968, so it just had its 50th anniversary. And it happens on the first Sunday of every month and the Saturday before that. And it's amazing. And this whole square is just filled with antique sellers. And then this is like another piazza, and the streets that go off of it, they're just filled with people selling antiques. And it's really cool and it's huge. And you could spend 2 days there, you could spend 1 day there, you could spend many dollars there. And you can find amazing gems there. But also in Arezzo, they have a pretty amazing fresco cycle by Piero della Francesca. So if you're interested in art history, this area is the place to go. For my money, Piero della Francesca is the best of the Renaissance artists. And of course he has some stuff in Florence, but the bulk of his work is actually in the province of Arezzo. And in this town, they have his fresco cycle in the church, and it's amazing. I took my family there 10 summers ago, and it was so hot. I try to avoid traveling in July, but kids are in school and all that good stuff. So we went, and my niece passed out cold in the middle of the church, which I felt bad about. But it was beautiful. She enjoyed it until she passed out. So the walls are covered in something that is called the Legend of the True Cross, and it's a pretty cool fresco cycle. And then when you leave town, they have something. It's kind of like the footsteps of Piero della Francesca, and the other towns are San Sepolcro and Monterchi, and they have just beautiful frescoes by this man, and he's amazing. Also, this Arezzo is the hometown of Giorgio Vasari. So again, if you're interested in art history, he's kind of the one that told you what was art and what wasn't back in the Renaissance. He was the man that told you what was good art and what wasn't. I guess he was an art critic, but he was also an architect, and you see different architecture from him throughout Tuscany as well. And that is probably the most famous town in the province of Arezzo, and that is Cortona. And if you were with us last week, I think I mentioned that this is where I lived. But Cortona is a hilltop town, and look at this. I thought this was a great view. Rather than doing something in town, I thought we'd get the whole town, which is pretty amazing. It's an Etruscan town, so it dates back pretty far. And you can't, it's hard to kind of point it out, but there is like one flat street in the middle of town, Via Nazionale, and that's amazing. So you can walk down this one flat street, but everything else is alleyways and climbing. So you have to be in good shape. But I'm telling you, there are ladies that are 95 years old that walk up and down these hills every day, and they're in amazing shape. You know, you got your old widows in the black outfits, just how you picture Italian women, and they're just wandering the town, and they're smoking a cigarette even. It's unbelievable. But the town is amazing. And all the way up at the top is a church, which has the bones of Santa Margherita, Saint Margaret. And not even just the bones, it's like a mummification. So it's really interesting. She just never decomposed. She's in a glass case up at the top. It's amazing. And John Paul II, Pope John Paul II, he came and visited. So they have all this, you know, he came to visit Santa Margherita. And so they have all this fanfare in the church now because he came shortly before he died. But it's an interesting town, and it's also actually on the border of Umbria. So right when you get to southeastern Tuscany, you get to the border of Tuscany and Umbria. So this is, at one point was part of Umbria, but it was annexed by Tuscany. So technically it is in Tuscany. So again, Etruscan walls, medieval, and also St. Francis, he did a stop here, which I think is interesting. So outside of town, just outside of town, there are what they call Franciscan cells. So cells is where, like a monastery, but that's where they stayed. So you can visit that too, and that's very interesting. And obviously the most famous thing about Cortona is Under the Tuscan Sun. Frances Mays came here early 90s, I think, and she wrote her famous book Under the Tuscan Sun. She bought her villa and renovated it, and there's a movie that's kind of it's a lovely movie. It's got beautiful scenery. They kind of faked the town, and I happened to be visiting friends there when they were shooting it, and suddenly it was snowing in October, but it wasn't really snowing, and and there was a fountain that wasn't really in the town, and it's always interesting to actually know a place and then see it in the movies and see what they do to it. But Cortona by herself is beautiful and definitely worth a visit, and she can be paired with Arezzo again, and she's about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from Florence. And the last small town I wanted to mention, I think is interesting. This is definitely off the beaten path. This is Pitigliano, and you can see it's kind of built on a stone, so it's kind of raised up. This one is called Little Jerusalem, and it's famous because it had a very thriving Jewish community for many years. Unfortunately, we all know what happened in the 40s, but amazingly, everybody escaped. They got helped out by their Christian friends, so everybody from this town survived. They have a very small community left. They don't even have enough for a minyan, they say, but they do have the synagogue there that is still quote unquote operating. Occasionally they will have a service. So if that's something that's of interest to you, Jewish history and things like that, this is, I think, the best place in Tuscany to visit is Pitigliano, Little Jerusalem. Now we're going to talk about wine. So as Warren will tell you, there's a lot of great wines coming out of Tuscany. It's great to visit small vineyards. I mean, of course, like we talked about last week, you can go to the big producers, but it's also great to go to the smaller boutique vineyards where you're visiting possibly some, and when you get to walk around with the winemaker himself or the owner and see how they really produce the stuff. And then usually they'll have some sort of setup or tasting room that I think is interesting. I do like to pick boutique wineries where they are set up to have people come in so that you get like a what they call the full experience of that, sitting down with the winemaker or the owner or someone higher level that can show you the different wines, and you do the tasting of each wine. And if you were here last week, you know that we talked about truffle quite a bit. Well, the other place to go truffle hunting in Italy is Tuscany. But as opposed to Piemonte, Tuscany also has black truffles, which means you can do it year round. Piemonte only in the fall, Tuscany all year round. So you can get the black truffle all year round, especially in the summer. And in the fall, you can get the white truffle in several locations. So here we are, a man and his truffle dog, which we all enjoy. And then again, you can go out on the hunts with the dog, and hopefully the dog finds something, which is always fun. And then you get to have a lovely meal where they shave the truffles that you found over the food. I won't wax poetic about truffles again this week, but they are amazing. And I just had them a couple of days ago in Croatia, and it's the season right now, and they're amazing. So fall, again, is the best time to go anywhere for truffle hunting. But if you're willing to accept the black truffle, then you can do it year round in Tuscany. And again, cooking classes, we can do cooking classes anywhere. And Jo Beth, I know you didn't do a cooking class here, but I know you stayed here. This is Casa Fabrini. And that's Giorgio, who is the owner.
Fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
I put this in there for you, hoping you'd be there. This is actually a group of ladies I took 5 years ago, travel agents. They're all travel agents, and we did a little trip and we stayed there, and it was amazing. And so throughout Tuscany, but this is nice to do it in a small kitchen with the owners. But there's so many recipes that come from Tuscany. The peachy pasta, which is from this area. Obviously the Florentine steak comes from Tuscany, Florence. So there's lots of different things. The wild boar ragu sauce is amazing. So again, cooking classes, hands-on, that's what we want. We want to get in there and then of course drink some wine with it, just because. And some of the other food, we're talking again about visiting food shops and stuff. And Pienza, which is the background again on Sandy, she always does this for me. She sets up a background. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about. This is a cheese shop in Pienza. Pienza is known for pecorino. So if you've heard of pecorino or pecorino romano, pecorino is from Pienza. This is a store, obviously, but you can also, I've driven down the Chianti Road, and headed to these towns, and a little old lady will just stop you and open up her barnyard and let you taste her fresh cheese. So all these amazing things are still happening in the countryside. But cheese is amazing, and cheese that's pecorino is always good paired with mustards or jams or local honey. They make lots of local honey. There's lots of beekeepers in the area. A girlfriend of mine was a sommelier, and she used to do wine tours for me, and now she's a beekeeper. I personally would stick with the wine, but it makes her happy to be at home and take care of the bees. And this is just a beautiful view of what's known as the Val d'Orcia, which is Pienza, Montepulciano area, Montalcino. And then there's obviously beautiful restaurants with amazing views. Can you imagine dining at a place like this? And the food is good too. That's the best. When you can pair a good view with good food and wine, that's a win. And that's usually going to happen in Tuscany. And that's it.
Wow. All right. Well, I'm hungry and ready to go. Hungry and thirsty. So I know John and Ellen, this was probably a little, walk down memory lane from when you were in Cortina. And Jo Beth and Ira, not only Pictigliano and the farmhouse. So I know lots of people have wonderful memories of lots of places in Tuscany. Any questions for Beth? Unmute yourself if you've got a question that you want to ask Beth, or a comment about a time that you were in Tuscany and something fabulous that you did.
So, hey, Sandy.
Yeah.
So are there any places to stay that are more countryside than in the towns?
Yes. Actually, the place that I showed you, hang on, we're gonna go back a sec. This is in the countryside, really in the countryside, you know, like go off the paved road in the countryside. And it's amazing. But there's lots of places in the countryside, be it hotels, farmhouses, what they call agriturismo, which is a working farmhouse where you can stay. It's got rooms and they're still either they have a vineyard or they have an olive grove or they are doing all the animals. It could be anything, but if it's got like a working farm, then that's an agriturismo. So yes, many things in the countryside.
Great, thank you, Beth.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Beth, I have a question for you. This is Mary Tunison.
Hi, Mary.
What is your projection for travel in Italy next year? Will it be twice as bad because there was no travel this year, or rare, or what are you thinking?
I'm trying to stay hopeful. That's what I'm thinking. You know, it's funny. I actually did manage to get a few clients out in February, you know, that did get to travel. And then March came, obviously. And in March, I was like, oh, May, everything's going to be fine. And in May, I was like, July. And then July, I was like, September. It's absolutely going to happen in September. And now I'm like, I hope, you know, they've gone into sort of another lockdown, a smaller version of a lockdown just this past week, where everything's closed, I think from 9 to 6. There's no more indoor dining. I think it's carry out only. I don't even think there's outdoor. I was telling Sandy when we first got on before you guys did that, so like she mentioned, I was in Croatia, and in order to leave yesterday, I actually drove through Slovenia and Italy and flew out of the Venice airport. And I was amazed to see the difference. But when we crossed into Italy, we were on a local road. So we were driving through towns on our way to the airport, and everyone was walking around with a mask, which I thought was amazing. Like, Italy is taking this seriously. So I think they're disappointed that their numbers were rising. For them, it's the second wave or whatever that you're calling it, but they want to eradicate it, and obviously they want travel to come back. Everyone I've talked to, they miss Americans. They want us back. So as soon as we're allowed back, I think it's going to happen. I don't know. That said, when that's going to be, hopefully for spring, but people are sort of starting to talk about maybe more May, June than April.
I think it's going to be kind of, you know, I mean, from doctors that I've been talking to, you know, about what's realistic about a vaccine and stuff like that. And from the optimistic perspective is, you know, that they'll probably have something first quarter, and then it's going to take some time to get it distributed. So I would think that we're talking probably late second quarter when things will probably, you know, start opening up, you know, because I mean, part of the problem, even if Italy gets things under control, if we don't have things under control in the US, they're not going to let US citizens in.
Yeah, that's the
That
problem.
becomes the problem. So we need to get ourselves down to, you know, good numbers before we're going to be invited in anywhere.
And it doesn't seem like we're doing that right now. It seems like we're going in the opposite direction, but who knows? Maybe we're just getting that out of the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
All right. Any other questions for Beth? All right, Beth, thank you. And if you can, okay, there we are. All right, Warren, we're all thirsty now. God, we've been walking around this gorgeous Tuscan countryside and looking at all this gorgeous food with the truffles and these fabulous views. Let's get some drinks going. And I'll just give a little intro because I know there's a few people on the line. Warren is an amazing, knowledgeable person about wine. I mean, he has a fabulous company called Duvan, and he's an amazing purveyor of wines from around the world. He has an incredible palate, and he's able to source these most amazing, unusual wines. So we've been very lucky to have Warren tour us around the world with just fabulous, fabulous things. So Warren, here we are in Tuscany. Tell us about what we're drinking.
Well, thank you, Sandy. And oh my God, I love Tuscany. I love Tuscany for Tuscany, but I especially love Tuscany for for wines and food, right up there with Piemonte, which I love as well. So Tuscany is really famous for red wines, primarily Sangiovese and what I refer to as Super Tuscans, which I'll get to in a minute. But there are wonderful, wonderful white wines in Tuscany, usually on the coast. So Bulgari, Maremma, a lot of the varietals there, especially as you begin to go further south towards Campania. A lot of great white wines, but in central Tuscany, there are also some wonderful white wines. This is a typical example of the famous wine from the Siena area, San Gimignano area, Florence area, is Vernaccia, Vernaccia di San Gimignano. You saw the beautiful photograph of the hilltop town there with all those towers, of which I think there were over 300 at one point and down to just a few dozen now after World War II. A lot of them got bombed. But this is a beautiful, beautiful wine. It's primarily Vernaccia. They put in a little bit of Trebbiano and a couple of other grapes. Tuscany also, interestingly enough, is making some wonderful, wonderful Chardonnay, including from Ornellaia, the famous Super Tuscan Ornellaia is making some Chardonnay in Chianti, where our red wine is from, actually, a sub-region. So this is just a lovely wine. It's, just a great aperitif wine. I know, Ginger, you've been drinking wine since 4:30, I think you posted. So you've had some food with it. I'm yet to have food with this wine, but I think I'm really enjoying it just as an aperitif right now, as is Connie. And I think it's lovely for that. It's fresh. It's got great notes of citrus and great floral nature. I think just a lovely, pleasant Monday night wine. And I think probably a pleasant surprise for folks. Very small winery, owned by a couple who've been in the wine business, have owned this winery for many, many, many years. I think it's Renato and Nadia, and just a wonderful place to go visit San Gimignano, and wonderful hospitality if you ever find yourself around La Lastra. So that's the white wine. What are your guys' thoughts? I know, Sandy, you keep saying every time we do one of these, Sandy, you say, I don't like white wine, but I love this one. So I don't know what folks think about this this Vernaccia, but it's the famous, most typical white wine in Tuscany.
Oh, everybody's very quiet tonight.
Everyone's muted.
Yeah, well, I get it.
So
let's see.
I think it's delightful. Nice kind of mouthfeel, very light, almost dangerous, because you could drink a lot of this without knowing.
And that's a problem. Why? I mean, what else is there to do but drink wine, eat food, and watch Netflix these days? Pretty soon, hopefully, we'll be able to get on a plane safely and go and drink these wines where they were made, which is really, really special. So again, great wine. Seafood, fish, anything you would expect. A crisp, light, but minerally. White wine to complement. So that's the Vernaccia. Now, of course, famous in Tuscany, of course, is Chianti. So I mean, I remember when I first came to America and I went to an Italian restaurant in New York. This was over 30 years ago, and they had the Chianti in the straw baskets. Remember the red checkercloth tablecloth and the straw baskets? They brewed that stuff on the inside of a donkey. Just terrible, terrible plonk. It's like almost how Blue Nun gave Gewürztraminer a bad name in the 70s. But interesting, Chianti, especially Chianti Classico, which is what this Gaglioli wine is, again, very small producer in a small region within Chianti. Chianti Classico is Castellana in Chianti. You always want to look for Classico in Chianti. That's the most elevated version of it, and always look for DOCG on the label. So if you get a Chianti Classico DOCG, that's the highest level of of Chianti. Now you'll notice on the bottle, on the back, is the rooster. So does everyone know the story of why there's a rooster on every bottle of Chianti, and why the rooster is the symbol of Chianti?
No.
Okay, so it's an
You have to
interesting
make sure
story.
you get up after drinking too much the night before.
No, so it's an interesting story. So back in Renaissance times, the two major cities or city-states were Siena and Florence, and there was a lot of tension. Obviously, Venice as well, but there's a lot of tension. So, and they would fight these wars between the city-states. So eventually, they decided because there was a huge dispute about where the borders of Siena extended to and where the borders of Florence extended to. So they agreed that they would send out a horse rider from each city upon the crowing of the rooster in the morning. So the Sienese, are they Sienese? Sienese, I think. The folks in the Sienese decided that they were going to feed this rooster full of food the night before so that he wouldn't sleep and would crow early in the morning. And the Florentines decided they would take a black rooster, because the Sienese had a white rooster, and they got a black rooster, and they decided they weren't going to feed him at all. So he'd be so pissed off and angry that he would wake up early in the morning and crow. Now, we all know what happens after Thanksgiving when you stuff yourselves, you sleep late. So what happened is the Sienese rooster slept in.
Oh.
But the Florentine rooster woke up very early, and then the horses rode. So what happened is the guy from Florence started riding south, the guy from England started riding north, and by the time they met, the guy was so far from Florence and the guy was so close to Siena, only 20 miles north of Siena, and that's why Florence is this huge region and Siena is the small one. And so they cheated. They cheated, and that's why to this day the black rooster is on the back of the bottle of the Chianti. So that's the story. So this is called Rubiolo, which means ruby. It's a beautiful, deep, dark ruby color on the wine, and yeah, John, you can see that there. And it's just again Sangiovese primarily. They put in a little bit of Merlot in this to add a little bit of sweetness. So Merlot also makes the color a little darker. But Sangiovese is the red wine grape of Tuscany, and particularly in Chianti. Now, in other parts of Tuscany, like in Montalcino, we have Brunello di Montalcino. By law, it has to be 100% Sangiovese. In Chianti, they mix in some other varietals, but it's still Chianti Classico. Other parts of Italy, back in the late 70s, they started planting a lot of Bordeaux varietals. So they planted Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon and others. And the Italian winemakers, particularly on the coast in Bulgaria, which the climate there is very similar to Bordeaux, started making these Bordeaux blends, the Meritage, which a journalist tapped as Super Tuscan. Super Tuscan doesn't exist other than some journalists giving it a label. But basically, a Super Tuscan refers to a Bordeaux-style blend, Cab, Merlot, Cab Franc, etc. Sometimes they put some Sangiovese into it. So it's basically a French wine made in Italy, but extraordinary versions of it. So this Chianti Classico is a superb example. Monica Larner of Wine Advocate, Robert Parker's Wine Advocate, actually rated this Rubiolo a couple of years ago the best red wine, one of the 5 best red wines in Italy under $25.
Wow.
And I think for that kind of money, you think about how much you'd have to pay out of Napa or Sonoma to get a wine of this quality. In fact, there is 100% Sangiovese made by a Napa winery I love called Terra Valentine. It's called Amore, 100% Sangiovese, and it's $60 a bottle. And it's not half this one. Well, it's half this. Wow, it's a good one, but it's not as great a value as this. So again, this is just a lovely, lovely, lovely bottle of wine. I mean, great richness, great dark blackberry flavors to it. Just an amazing wine with lasagna, with any grilled meats. Stica alla Fiorentina, which is famous down there, or some pappardelle sugo would be amazing with this wine. So that's Gaglioli. It's a love story, actually. The Thomas and Monica Barr actually met in Tuscany and fell in love, and this is together with their children. I think this is their
love child.
But very small, only 80,000 bottles, are made. Now La Lustra is even smaller; it's only 20,000 bottles. But you think about it, it's only about 6,500 cases of this particular Chianti that's made. They also have more elevated wines that are even rarer and of extraordinary quality, 100% Sangiovese. Their Pecchia is one of Italy's greatest wines, but slightly north of $100 on that one. But I think this is just a beautiful example of what a lovely, mid to high end, representative wine from Tuscany can do. And it's been a perennial favorite of mine, and something I always have Chianti Classico around. And I'd say I probably drink more Gaglioli Chianti Classico than pretty much anything else.
Delicious. So what do you think? Do you like this? Is this
Yeah, good. It's really nice. Yeah, we like it.
great for the pizza? Pizza's great for the pasta. How's your pizza coming out, Lori and David? The mouths are full, can't even talk.
First pizza was amazing. Yeah. Wait, we're echoing.
Okay, you talk, Ginger. You talk. No.
You can talk.
I think you're frozen, Ginger.
I'd like Warren to tell some more stories about medieval.
The first time of using this pizza oven.
It's not gonna work.
Okay, not gonna work.
So, that's
I
not
think
working.
you froze, Warren.
Mute.
Oh, no.
Oh, Matt, I guess, what did you say, Matt? You want me to tell more medieval Italian
I
stories?
enjoyed your story about medieval Italy. I'm sure
I'm a drunkard, not a historian. But actually,
Just make it up.
Shut up, Warren.
well,
Make it
Florence
up.
wasn't Florence where Savonarola burnt all the books and then they ended up burning him at the stake,
Savonarola.
the and all that stuff. So a couple of things. I mean, I love Siena. I mean, Siena's extraordinary. The church, the cathedral there, the black and white marble cathedral is just, it's extraordinary. And the Palio, of course, is pretty amazing. If you haven't seen the James Bond movie Quantum of Solace, go on Netflix tonight and just watch that opening scene of James Bond running around, the square during Palio there. It's quite extraordinary.
Which one is it?
But it's really, really rich in history and in wine. And there, Montalcino particularly. I mean, for me, the Brunellos di Montalcino, especially from some of the smaller, handcrafted families, down there, are arguably among not only Italy's but the world's great wines. Again, we've done some stuff in Piemonte and other places where Nebbiolo is sort of a lighter, more feminine, more floral style of wine, compared with Sangiovese, which is much more bold, much more masculine, much more forceful of a wine. And you can sort of compare it with, in Italy, people fall in love in Tuscany first, certainly with Sangiovese, but eventually migrate to Piemonte with Barolo and Barbaresco and all those sophisticated layers and undertones and tertiary characteristics and complexity. Similarly, most people with France start in Bordeaux but ultimately make it to the Nut Plus Ultra, which are the Pinot Noirs of Burgundy. And it's sort of a similar type of thing, the delicacy and fragrant nature and femininity of Pinot Noir in Burgundy versus those big, bold, earthy, leathery cigar note flavors that you get in Bordeaux. Similarly, Tuscany versus Piedmont do the same thing.
Well, this was fabulous. I mean,
There's-
oh God, when are they going to open the border so we can move around again? This is the most frustrating part about all of it. But, you know, I mean, we can dream and they're just things to put on your list. And in the meantime, we get to taste these fabulous wines from Warren and hear these amazing stories and see the beautiful photos from Beth. So, you know, just keep dreaming. I mean, there is a future. You know, I've said this a million times. After the Spanish flu came the roaring 20s, and we're in the 2020s. So we're going to have a big bounce back. And it's going to be wonderful. And, you know, it'll be soon. I mean, they had to wait 2.5 years. We're not going to have to wait 2.5 years because we've got modern science and technology. So we'll be back in business. I think 2021, towards the middle part of 2021, you're going to start seeing things start moving. And I think by 2022, it's going to kind of, you know, be fading very much. So speaking of which, Warren was talking about the big cabs in Bordeaux. I mean, we do have the river cruise, November 2021. And if you book before, by the end of this month, the 31st, we can save $850 per person on the cabin prices. So if you're interested, get in touch with me. We're getting close to the 31st. And then, of course, there's Egypt in February 2022, but they're not known for their wines. But they got other stuff.
We had nice wine. We had nice wine in Egypt.
So, and, you know, I'm working on a trip to Piemonte, and I've got something else, you know, relating to Italy and truffles that I'm kind of also kind of moving forward with. So keep your calendars open for 2022. We'll have some fabulous things that will call for Italy to come around. So it'll be very, very exciting. So any last comments? Oh, one other thing. I mean, you know, next week we're going to be going to Sicily. So, you know, we're going to be an island off the tip of the boot, the toe of the boot. So that'll be very exciting. I mean, a lot of people have been to Tuscany and Piemonte, but I think less people have been to Sicily. It's just been becoming a new popular part of Italy for people to visit. So I think it'll be exciting for all of us. And Warren says the wines are just incredible.
The wines in Sicily are fabulous, and you know I'm a huge fan of volcanic wines because I love that the minerality and how the grapes have to fight for every ounce of moisture in the volcanic soils, and the Etna Biancos and Rossos and the wines, you know, obviously Mount Etna volcano, but you know we have a Colossi wine. It's from a little island off the coast of Sicily that's phenomenal, beautiful white wine. And if I'm not mistaken, we're doing the Nero d'Avola for the red from Peuli del Pisciato, which I think is going to be a real treat. I mean, obviously Nero d'Avola is Sicily's most well-known varietal. And I think you folks will really enjoy that. I've got a fun story to tell about that winery and the label on that wine and everything. So I think we'll have fun next week on that.
It'll be fun. I haven't been to Sicily, so I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun, and there will not be any truffles. The truffles and.
Oh.
That's all right. I had truffles last night in Montclair, 7 courses of it. So you don't have to.
Well, I've been doing this fabulous cooking webinar with these truffle chefs who are former French Laundry. It's called Truffle Shuffle. And the next invitation, I'll put a link. If you use the link, you can save 10%. It's been so much fun. We did this chicken with truffle and fingerling potatoes. It was just amazing. Next week is a pasta with truffles. I mean, I am just like loving this stuff. So I'll leave the link for you. And if any of you are interested, it's like the most amazing thing. I mean, and they send you a box with every single ingredient. You don't need any, and it's all pre-measured. You don't even have to measure anything. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And then they had the most amazing cocktail. And all you have to do is add whatever the whiskey is. They even send you the pre-mixed cocktail mix. I mean, just fabulous, so much fun, and people all over the country are on this. It's really amazing. So I am just getting addicted to this. So we'll see what happens with them as well. But and anyway, just one more thing. I mean, Thanksgiving's coming up, and if any of you want to have some fabulous wines kind of put together and selected by Warren, think about it. Warren can put back together some fabulous selections for your Thanksgiving dinner. So be sure you contact him for that too. So
Yeah,
any
thank
last
you, Sandy.
words, anybody about anything? All right, have a fabulous week, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday. And don't forget to vote, whoever you vote for, but don't forget to vote. Okay, everybody, take care, stay
Good night.
safe, wear your masks. We want to travel.
All right, thanks, Warren. Thanks, Beth.
Bye-bye.
Hey, John and Ellen. All right, everybody, good night.